Yeah. Ah. Turn it down. Turn that down. There we go.
Let's put that higher then.
Yeah, but we have to just test it so it doesn't do that horrible noise. Okay, so let's see if we can hear the...
Say something on the mic.
Because we'll hear that in there. Perfect.
Make it louder.
That's because it's the mirror. It's mirroring.
The sound of
They want to be on this. I mean, I hope you're not recording this.
Yeah, we are.
Not now.
How are you?
How are you?
We
What
actually
you
are,
do?
but I'll cut it out, don't worry.
Well, yeah. That's fine.
Okay, Matty. See if you can hear that in 30 seconds. Travel back in time. I'm the director of executive.
So what's Andrew's role?
CEO. We're going at it together.
Very good.
Taking on the world together.
This, Andrew.
Yeah, just hey, hello. How are you?
I must say, I've seen that. What happened to your breaking university and job? Beyond, yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah. I'm like the rest of us, exactly.
Real genuine design.
I can talk to the continuing editors I never get hold of Robin anymore. I just hold on to him. It's a youngster that runs that list. They're awful to see people think about. It's interesting because I wrote to you.
Hello everyone, good evening, Shalom Tov. Thank you very much for coming. Before I pass over to the introductions, I just wanted to first of all welcome everyone from across the globe watching on the live stream, and I hope it works. If not, I apologise to you. But if you remember that this is, we like to be modern, so please feel free to tweet and Facebook as much as you like. Tweet us with the handle @Mizrachi_UK. You can use the hashtag Women in Orthodoxy. Our Facebook page is Mizrachi UK. Please feel free to tweet and Facebook away as the evening goes on.
Shavua Tov, welcome. It's brilliant to see so many of you here tonight. This is possibly one of the most challenging, most important, or possibly it is the most important, most challenging issue that's facing modern Orthodoxy today. And on behalf of various institutions, amongst them Mizrachi UK, Midrasha, Yeshivat, Women's Institute for Torah, Friends of Etzion, and so on, we decided to gather here tonight and discuss such crucial issues that have so much to do and are directly related to how we are going to engage Judaism over the next decade or decades. It's a great pleasure to have with us Rav David Stav, the Rav of the city of Shoah. Rav Stav is not only the chairman of Tzohar, of which I've been a member for many years, but he's also an incredibly influential and incredibly positive rabbinic figure in Israel, and a Rav in every way. So he brings that perspective. Moshe Lichtenstein, the Rosh Yeshiva, of which I'm a graduate, of where I studied, where I received the majority of my Torah, and very humbly, I'm very, very grateful to have the Rosh Yeshiva with us. And the Rosh Yeshiva will give the Rosh Yeshiva's perspective, the leader's perspective of modern Orthodoxy. And in order to facilitate all this and host all this, we have with us the one and only Lauren Levin, Rebbetzen Levin, and I'm passing over to Rebbetzen
Levin. Everybody. We're living in exciting times, blessed times. Times where women are unprecedentedly capable, knowledgeable, thirsty to be completely engaged in their Jewish life and learning to be wholly involved in their Jewish narrative. All exciting potential is accompanied by a challenge. The challenge of knowing where the parameters lie. And change is often difficult for two reasons. Firstly, whilst it's welcomed by those who champion change and lobby for change, for other people, deviation from what they've always known is difficult. Change is difficult, especially when it comes to our Jewish lives, where tradition is something so strong, where holding on to the memories of what our parents did, our grandparents did, is something that we all cling to. The second challenge is knowing where to set the boundaries, how to apply newfound realities to our eternal value system and the halachic process. For this, we look to the leading voices of our generation, who are steeped in Torah, yet in touch with the realities. It's therefore a great zchut and privilege to be in conversation this evening with two such people, Rav Stav and Rav Moshe Lichtenstein. And I'd like to call upon them to both outline for us the way they consider women in Orthodoxy in today's day and age and their vision.
So, thank you very much. It's a bad idea to fight with the moderator, but I don't consider myself a leading. I'm struggling with the same issues like everybody else, and I'm trying to grow my way to some kind of modus vivendi, and I will I'm glad to share my thoughts, but they are no more than that. But I want to begin by somewhat disappointing you. Besides the fact that this YouTube is on, and therefore I'll cross my T's and dot my I's, I was told to give a brief introduction, but not that people may lose focus, and that therefore I should try to make a short introduction. Well, I think we're talking about very serious issues which if people are really interested in delving, getting down to the bottom of these issues, it requires concentration. It requires not only talking about the hot button issues, but also really trying to get the fundamentals. And therefore, I will talk. I don't guarantee to stick to 5 minutes. Don't be too scared. But I do intend to discuss on a more conceptual and basic level, because I'm assuming that if anyone is going to spend 2-3 hours on this topic and he came this evening instead of going to the movies, he deserves more comprehensive treatment, which just requires some elaboration. So therefore, I'll begin not by addressing the latest headline in the Jewish tabloid, but rather by trying to discuss indeed the fundamentals. And I'll begin by picking up on what Irene said a moment ago. I think before we discuss any of these issues and begin to express frustration and to vent about that we haven't come along far enough or there's been too much change, so I think we have to recognize, we have to take 2 steps backwards and recognize what's been accomplished. My grandmother, Aleh Shalom, was totally frustrated because she couldn't learn anything. She had tremendous aspiration and tremendous longing for learning. And she was born in 1902 in Lithuania. And after she got married, she was never able to realize her ambitions and her accomplishments. Had she been living nowadays, I have no doubt she would have been very knowledgeable and she would be quite a scholar. I think the opportunities that are available nowadays are, if you look at the half full cup and not the half empty cup, we've come a huge amount from 30, 40, 50 years ago. I see the opportunities my daughters have. It's supposed to what my sisters had. It's supposed to what my mother and grandmother had. And you can clearly see a perspective rising. So, indeed, people may be frustrated that maybe more has not been accomplished yet, or maybe, but I think we have to indeed recognize what has been accomplished. Now, it doesn't matter whether you want the right or on the left. Wherever you are, you're not what you were 50 years ago. I walk into Beit Midrash in Gallows or in Lindenbaum, and you see a Beit Midrash with books and active learning. You can get the feel there's a Beit Midrash going on. And he says, this would have been a dream 100 years ago, and even probably 50 years ago. So let's recognize that before we put things into perspective. The second point is, I think we have to differentiate between individual time and historical time. In the life of an individual, 40 years is a huge amount of time. If I say to someone, we'll say in a few minutes, that things have to take an evolutionary course, that it has to be done over time. I think it makes perfect sense, but the problem is the individuals are often frustrated, because if I tell the individual, look, it may only happen 40 years from now, 20 years from now, they're certainly frustrated, because they don't know if we're going to be here 40 years from now, or certainly not 20 years from now we won't be here. Yet, from a historical perspective, it's the blink of an eye. From the point of view of history, 40 years is nothing. So if we look at what the individual can achieve, that's one way of measurement. If we look at what the community, how Torah evolves, and Torah has been us for thousands of years, there's a whole different perspective, and I think we have to keep that into account before we become totally frustrated. And if what happened in your generation, if it happened in your grandchild or your granddaughter's generation, from the point of view of the system, it is legitimate, even though the individual may be disappointed. Okay, now, to get down to the topic itself. First and foremost, we're talking about the emerging goal of women in Judaism. I think we have to define for ourselves what is our major goal. And I think the major goal has to be to enhance Avodat Hashem, to allow them better and deeper religious expression. It has to be our goal with men and their issues, it has to be our goal with women. In other words, what we want to do is against Avodat Hashem. Equality is not the goal. Equality may be a value as well. But the basic value is the value of bringing man closer to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Man or woman closer to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And by the way, we have Kohanim, Levim. Nowadays, Kahuna is not it's not really an option. Tomorrow morning, B'ezras Hashem Beit HaMikdash will be built. And all of a sudden, I'll be very frustrated. The Kohen can go inside, the Kohen can do all the work. There I'll be refused entry, and then I can be able to do a fraction of the Kohen can do. So yes, Judaism doesn't necessarily consider equality to be its primary value. And even though I'm willing to grant equality is a value as well, but I think when prioritize values, the main value I'm asking myself here is not how to achieve equality, it's how to achieve for women greater avodat Hashem. And I believe that many of the opportunities, such as Talmud Torah and participation in various rituals, enhance avodat Hashem. But I think the overarching goal has to be defined as, said before, to create greater and more intense avodat Hashem. That's the main goal. Equality may be, or often is, what are the avenues to achieve that? But the overarching goal is Ani kirata l'kim lito. I desire the intimacy and the nearness of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there are three separate categories regarding issues of feminism and halacha. Some of them are, if you want, hard issues. Halacha is a clear position. As long as Torah and Orthodoxy and current state exist, there's no chance and no way of changing them. The halacha of Gittin, Kiddushin, Mitzvah Drama, these are all rooted in Torah and Doraita. Until Sanhedrin comes or Mashiach will come, they're not going to change, and there's no chance of changing them. We can learn how to maneuver within the existing halachot, but those will not change. The other issues, which are not problematic, at least I assume the premises that Mizrachi is working under, in which, in a sense, we provide opportunities, and those should still be encouraged, and we should do everything we can to pour resources and spiritual energy into Talmud Torah for women, into mitzvahs for women, and the like. And the third, what I guess you could call soft issues, those in which, at the moment, there's a particular position, halach or minhag, or something like a certain norm at the moment, certain praxis, which this lacks the halachic bedrock status, what I mentioned before. And these are some of the issues which are at the moment are the more contemporary and the more contentious ones. And these, I think, are the ones in which we are debating and deliberating and have the dilemmas regarding these issues. Now, regarding that, often the issues are not necessarily issues of men and women or feminist issues. At root, they're often issues of the halachic process. Meaning, the halachic process, like any legal system, has a certain inner logic and a certain inner rhythm to it. And this rhythm is independent, it has nothing to do with issues necessarily related to women. The same halachic rhythm and process which dictates at the moment, say, aliyot for women or zimun for women, is the same which also deals with kidneyot and with many, many other halachic issues. In other words, the process has a certain inner logic to it, which, as I said before, the same. I can, for instance, there are many issues of Sephardi and Ashkenazi halacha. In Israel, Baruch Hashem, we have kibbutz galuyot. There's a lot of interaction between the Sephardi halachic word, the Ashkenazi halachic word, which did not exist 70, 80 years ago. And this is also a part of the halachic rhythm. In other words, I often find that discussions which are presented as issues of feminist halacha really revolve around how we view the halachic process. And therefore, any real discussion of this has more to do with our positions on the halachic process and how do we view that. And here I will say the following. Personally, I strongly believe the halachic process, if properly practiced, is rooted in an evolutionary trajectory. In other words, things change in halacha. Things change in tefillah. things change in Minhag, but they're done so evolutionary. A revolutionary way is the wrong way. It's in dissonance with the practice. It rubs against the system. It creates what they call Hebrew simbat saneret. It obstructs and blows up your plumbing system. The proper way to enact change is to evolution. Now, an evolutionary pace is a slow pace, but it's much healthier for the system. And I can point out to you, as I said before, independent of these, I can point out to you many changes in liturgy at a snail's pace, maybe, but over my lifetime, if you remember the Machzor, well, in English it's a little different, I guess, but if you remember the Machzori that I grew up in the USA, in Israel, with all the pied small letters, which when I was a child, no one said those piyutim. I guess yes, they probably still do, but over there, at least in the States, I'm sure Israel knows the piyutim, but they were still published in small letters, because 100 years ago they were said. Nowadays, if you take the Koran Machzor, they've been already relegated to the back of the book, and they no longer are already inside the actual text. If you take, I think you have to show one of the newer Machzorim, they've already been booted out the book, they've been totally removed. In other words, things change. When I was a child in Israel, Mara Cohen, they only said the first 11 stanzas, because that was the minhag. When it was a catchy tune, and so now all of a sudden I was going to say 22. These are trivial examples, but they illustrate that there are this evolutionary process halachically at work. I'll give two examples from women's issues. When I got married, and this is one witness here who can attest to that. The first sukkahs after I got married, my in-laws invited us for the first day of Yom Tov. And it's a matter of course. The men were told to sit on the part of the table under the schach, and the women were relegated to the point under the ceiling, which was not uncommon at the time. I think if tomorrow morning I will invite my daughter to Sukkot, I'll offer her to sit under the ceiling, she will take her esrog, which I buy her, and she'll stone me with it. It's been years since I've seen anyone. It's probably 25 years since I've seen sukkah in which men are under the ceiling and men under the schach under the ceiling. When I was a child, it was common. This, of course, is economic drama here as well. Bigger homes, bigger sukkot, but also there's religious. I remember when I was in Boston, 1979. So a certain Rav came to the town for Shabbos, and the Rav took me over and said, whispered in my ear, "You see his Rebbetzen? She's famous throughout America. She's the only woman in all America who brings a lulav and esrog to show." And it was true at the time. I don't want to say her name, but it was actually true. She was the only person who had a daled minim in shul. When I got married, I would buy one for myself and then give it to my wife and to my daughters. I now buy 5, and I have 3 daughters, and I buy now 5 sets every year. One for my wife, one for my daughters. I won't shoot, I think in the first day, it's supposed to be about 80 to 100 women who come with daled minim. And Chol Moed, 15 girls who show up with daled minim. Now, so in other words, these are called evolutionary changes. There haven't been headlines, there haven't been controversies. I've never been invited to a panel about women sitting in the sukkah. I've never been invited to a panel should a woman hear shofar. They've got some evidence, but they once upon a time they weren't. And they've now become, so I think many things are changing and will continue to change. The problem is, the issue is which people want at the moment immediate change, and they demand that you're done immediately. Now, of course, you could say to me, well, how does evolutionary change happen? It happens. I don't want to waste too much time, but there are formulas, and these things do happen. And I now, I would add another point. If you go to the crystal ball and say to me, 20 years from now, Ashkenazim will kidney us. Or 20 years from now, because of the interaction Ashkenazi and Sephardi halacha, so all kinds of minhagim will change. And by the way, I think this will happen, because you can see the dynamic on the ground. And if you say to me, well, in my crystal ball, I can tell you exactly what the minhag will be 20 years from now, or what it was 20 years ago. I think it's totally irrelevant to what I do tomorrow morning. If you come say to me 20 years from now, people will eat kibbutz on Pesach, say Gesundheit. So they're lucky. But tomorrow morning it's irrelevant. Hayom lasotam, v'lo machar lasotam, v'lo etmol. You live in the present. Now I'll explain this very briefly, but it's a crucial point. This is, I think, a crucial point. Mitzvot are not a question of absolute truth. It's not a question simply, is this right or wrong? In theology or philosophy, it's either math, it's right or it's wrong. If you come to me with a crystal ball that math or right, it's conclusions of geometry, of proofs, 20 years from now, I'll accept them tomorrow morning and say, Baruch Hashem, I was able to be ahead of my time. But halakha mitzvot are not truth, not only truth. They are a relationship between man and God. And the mitzvot is a relationship between Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu. Relationships exist in the present. If you come at the age of 24 and say to me, when you'll be 64, you'll do things differently, I'll say, fine, I'll be 64, I'll act like a 64-year-old. But I'm 24, I'm going to be acting like a 24-year-old. A relationship, its truth is at that particular point in time. And if Am Yisrael is working with Tav Shin Ayin Vav at this point in time, that's where we should be. Minhag, the only basis for minhag is based upon this. Contemporary practice is part of the relationship. And if you have a future practice or past practice, doesn't count. So the one you can come and say to me, look, in the 12th century, things were done differently, and I say, fine. In the 12th century is legitimate. In the 20th century or 21st century, it's not. Except in the 25th century like that, then also doesn't matter. So we have to try and continue to work in an evolutionary process from within. But I do not think, I'm convinced, that you cannot speed up time. And you cannot, like if I say Ashkenazi and Sephardi halacha, we fuse in 100 years from now, so wonderful for that generation, for me at the moment it's irrelevant. And therefore, I think the same is true as well. Now, how do you identify what is a good evolutionary change and what is a revolutionary change? Part of it, I think, is motivation. What's the motivation? How do we assess, do I want to accept change or not? Part of the motivation. Part of says, how much is it organically an extension of the contemporary process? How much is an attempt to overhaul the system? Now, you can notice this partially it's under the radar. That's one of the, these are identifying characteristics. There may be other characteristics as well. But I strongly believe that we should certainly do as much as possible to provide opportunities to enhance Avodat Hashem. And Chazal talk about Lasot Nachat Ruach L'Nashim, to provide women with this religious expression. It's a crucial halachic value which should be utilized. But I really think the decision should grow in an evolutionary manner, and we begin to ask ourselves about various issues. This should be the guiding light. And it's encouraging change which can enhance Avodat Hashem, doing it in a way that it springs organically and develops in an evolutionary fashion, and not an attempt to overhaul the system in a radical fashion.
So welcome to everyone. The truth is that I could sign almost on every word that Professor was saying, but then I was afraid in the beginning that it would be boring tonight, maybe, because probably we agree almost on everything. And then, thank God, Moshe said some comments that I want to remark and save us from being bored, just agreeing upon everything which... Well, first of all, I think that Moshe said wonderful ideas and put it on the table. But I want to be here I want to take the position of the advocate of the devil and to raise some issues that will make the statements that Rabbi Lichtenstein has made a bit more question. It's true that there are fundamental issues that could not be changed. But these are the questions that many of our youngsters raise to us and actually throw it in front of our faces and ask us, how could the Torah say such a thing? How could the Torah decide that the man has the ability to give the get, and we the women, have to suffer from those husbands who refuse to give the get, and the Torah has given that authority to the husband. So this woman tried to find solutions for that, different kind of solutions that will be within the system, will be within the boundaries, but yet will try to take from those husbands that are utilizing that authority in bad manners, that will try to take from them these authorities, such as a law that, for instance, will be mafkia the kiddushin under certain circumstances. That's one example. The definition of revolution versus evolution, which is very simple, and again, completely agree, but it's not accurate when you see the revolution that Rabbeinu Yoshem has done to the family life. I mean, to decide one day that a man could not get married to two wives, or to decide against the very fundamental rule of the Gemara that a woman could be divorced, coerced to be divorced without a will, and to say now it doesn't exist anymore, it's not an evolution. This is a revolution that requires from a very big rabbi to take responsibility and to say it's impossible to continue this way. By the way, I just want to mention a story that happened, unfortunately, almost 2 years ago. There was a big debate, and it still exists, the debate about women reciting Kaddish. And almost 2 years ago, when Mrs. Rachel Frankel had lost her son in that terrible event of the 3 kids that were kidnapped from Gush Etzion and afterwards were murdered by those terrorists. And she recited Kaddish in front of all the rabbis that were present in the funeral of their kids. And since then, the story is over. There is no woman in Israel that would want to say Kaddish, and anybody will dare to stop her from doing it. And it's only because of one woman, one hero woman, that took decision and they took responsibility. And I don't want to use the word took the advantage, but you understand what I mean, in the good way of saying the word took the advantage, and decided that since she wants to recite Kaddish, and she said that Kaddish, and since then that discussion is over. By the way, what Rav Moshe, and again I fully agree with what he said, defines as evolution, others will define as a reform revolution, which means that it's very relative, the ways you define what you define as evolution. For instance, what your sister Esti is doing in Migdal Oz, which is a wonderful work, and you define it as a kind of evolution. I remember your father, Alav Shalom, bless his memory, when I asked him, I think it was 30 years ago, about studies of women. And he said to me, I remember the words he was using. I have no interest to teach my daughter, it was Esti, to teach her Kitzot HaChoshen. And you know what? I think she has no interest in that also. That's the way, these are the words he used. My daughter learns today in Migdal Oz, and the rabbi that is teaching there keeps on teaching them Avnei Miluim, Kitzot HaChoshen. So I asked myself, what would Rabbi Lichtenstein said 30 years ago and compare, how would we consider this? Evolution or revolution? So I guess, if you ask this question Rav Steinman or Rav Eliashiv, he would consider this as a complete revolution. I guess Rav Lichtenstein, the father and his son, are encouraging this phenomenon. So I guess it's very hard to define what is considered revolution and evolution. That's even what concerns us is even more is even more than that. I was a few years ago in a convention that was done, it was the 50th anniversary of the Encyclopedia Talmudit, or maybe the 40th anniversary, I don't remember the exact anniversary. And I was invited to talk about Rav Herzog and his policy, and his way of studies, and his way of pastoring. And Rav Herzog wrote a series of 6 books. And again, it has to do with women, but as Rav Lichtenstein said earlier, it's just an example, because the issue is much broader than the women. And the issue was, how should the state of Israel, when it was established, how should we refer to the question of Yerusha, of daughters? As you know, according to the halakha, when someone passes away, his sons inherit him, and the daughters are excluded from the Yerusha. Now you could imagine that someone left an apartment or a big account in a bank, and he has 5 daughters and 1 son. And he will take all the money, and they will be left with nothing. Now, I'm not dealing now with the practical question how to deal with this. First of all, it raises a moral question. And again, I agree with what Rav Lichtenstein said, that the essence of our existence is not equality, but to be engaged to Avodat Hashem and to be committed to Avodat Hashem. But because that's the essence of our lives, I guess that many of our daughters, many of our sisters, I don't have sisters, but I have daughters, 4, and I guess there is a question. How could the Torah write such a law that excludes the daughters from Yerusha? Now, what did the rabbis do throughout generations? It's not that they ignored the need of Yerusha, of the daughters. So there was the idea of shtar chatzi zachar. That was a kind of a combination that the father gave a loan, a fake loan, to the daughter. And he said to the children, look, if you don't give them, you don't give the daughters a part of the Yerusha, so then I owe them such and such sums of money. So Rav Herzog realized all these issues, and he said, let's make a takana, let's make a regulation that all daughters will be able to get equal parts in the Yerusha, which sounds quite fair. And the Chazon Ish went nuts against the Rav Herzog, and he struggled against that. It's a reform, it's a revolution, it's anti-halacha, it's anti all what we stand for. And he didn't agree, and eventually, legally, he won. Rav Herzog initiative was cancelled. Practically, I don't know one family, not a Dati, not a Haredi, I don't know one family in Israel that the daughters give up and they don't receive a part in the Yerusha. I never heard about such a family. As a matter of fact, Rav Herzog is quoting Shayagnon, that describes how in Poland there was once a family that the sons didn't want to give a part of the Yerusha to the sisters, and he describes this as a kind of V'ha'ir Ra'asha, and all the people were screaming, were astonished because of that story that there was one family that didn't agree to give the part for the sisters. But that's not the practical question. Is not the problem. The girls will get along and they will get the money they want to get. The problem is that we want the Torah to inspire us. We want the Torah to be a source of enlightenment. We want the Torah to be something that our children will look up and will say, wow, this is the source for inspiration. This is the source to teach us, to be enlightening us, and to enlighten all the human beings, all the Gentiles in this world. Does this inspire us, or does this push us away from Torah? So I think that when we deal with these issues, it's not enough only to focus on the question, what is the right way to evolve? Is it done by revolution or evolution? But to look at the right for women to vote, and that he struggled so much against giving women the right to vote. I could not defend it. And when I see the reasons, forget modesty. I understand what modesty is about, and I think it's one of the struggles that we have to struggle to strengthen our education in modest issues. But when he says he's afraid of shalom bayit, if the woman will have the right to vote, it means that, God forbid, the man will vote for one party and the woman would vote for another party. So this could create the collapse of the family. And I read it, and I can believe it. And that's my Rebbe. I want you to know, that's my Rebbe, and I admire my Rebbe. And the vast majority of the Torah that I learn and that I teach is the Torah of my Rebbe. And when I read this, it's for me, it's more than frustration, something that it's very hard for me to understand. And if that's what happens to me, you can imagine what happens to the youngsters that have no commitment to nobody, and especially not to Rav Kook and not to anybody else. And the last comment that I wanted to make, and it refers to what Moshe was talking about, and that's the statement that I made at that event of Rav Herzl, that I have a feeling that many times we are terrified, and that by the biggest obstacle for Orthodoxy to develop in the right way, to evolve in the right way. Again, I fully agree with what Rav Moshe was saying about that. I really feel that in many occasions we are terrified by the very scary word reform. Whenever I say something which is based on Shulchan Aruch, which is based on Ramah, take for example, Rav Moshe has mentioned the issue of Zimun. I dare to say that most of the people here are not aware of the fact that Shulchan Aruch says that women are allowed to make a zimun if they sit separately, and they are commanded to participate the zimun if it's done by the men. It's only that they are not allowed to make the zimun with the men's presence. But once they sit at the table with men, not like my daughters that when they want to go to Bnei Akiva Friday night, they say, okay, we make Birkat Hamazon, and we go, wait a minute, you have to be a part of the zimun. It's true that you are not allowed to run the zimun, but you have to be there. That's Halakha in Shulchan Aruch. And then when Mishapura tries to explain why am I not makbid that, well, okay, women and women. But when I said that woman has to be a part of that, well, that's reform. And when I say that women have to take place in the truth bowl, because they have loans, just like others, it sounds reform. And when I say that women Erev Rosh Hashanah have to be a part of Hatarat Nedarim, because if you adopt that minhag of Hatarat Nedarim, there's no difference between women and men. It sounds reform. Eimat ha-reform on us. We are so terrified that everything that we say sounds like reform just because it's not following the habit that somebody else is doing. By the way, going back to the Kaddish, I saw just a few days ago a tshuva of Rav Moshe Feinstein saying that the minhag in Russia, in Lithuania, was that women recited Kaddish. But when you say today these words, it sounds reform. But that's what Rav Moshe Feinstein says about the minhag in previous generations. But today, everything that doesn't fit to the habit of some communities or some politicians gets all of a sudden becomes reform. So again, I completely agree with the foundations that Rebbetzen Lauren has drawn in front of us. But yet, we have to be careful using the terminology of evolution and revolution, to know where to use it, to understand that the main essence of our existence is connection with Hashem, Avodat Hashem, but to realize that we have to look after inspirational explanations, how to deal with the challenges and with the questions that this generation is raising to us and is not ready to accept and answer. This is reform, this is revolutionary, that's too much revolutionary. They deserve to get from us answers and sincere answers to the challenges that they put in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Following on, we've discussed some of the concepts and the conceptual sides of some of these topics. Building on those concepts into some of the very practical, currently much debated topics. Perhaps let's begin with complex, halachic, and currently very debated topic, which is that of female religious leadership within modern Orthodoxy. Of course, in the Chumash, we're told, Som Tisim Melech HaMelech, that one can appoint a king, and the Rambam famously in Hilchot Melachim says, Melech V'lo Malka, you can't have a queen. On the other hand, we have the Shofetet, the judge, the Vora, who we, especially after last week of Torah, we have the powerful image from her song, her having judged under her palm tree. And the question is, how do we fit all the terms, the training courses that are now being created, the Maharat, the Rabbah, the Manhiga Ruchanit, that we're hearing, how do they fit into these categories in terms of the biblical prohibition and the biblical precedent that we have? Rastav, you're actively involved in our Torah Stone Institute for Halachic Leadership. Can you explain why you feel that this is permissible to be training Manhigot, and also how it differs to other programs?
The prophet Micha has said, "Va'amid alehem," I think, Nesichei Adam, and he mentions 3 leaders that Hashem put upon us when He redeemed us from Egypt: Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. He mentions in the same line the leadership of Miriam. Now, first of all, I don't think that's the forum to discuss all the halachic issues and details, but when one of the Haredi rabbis, politicians, was asked, how could you participate in the coalition of Golda Meir, which was a king, which was the prime minister? So his answer was, to be prime minister, it's just like to be Chaver in Vad Bayit. I don't know how to translate it. Chaver in Vad Bayit, but I guess you understood the idea. So that was his excuse to explain how come it is permissible to be a part of the coalition of Golda Meir. First of all, that's also the Rambam that says that Melech V'lo Malka, and all jobs could not be held by a woman. It's not agreed upon all the rabbis, but already in previous generations it was questioned. That Rambam and Rabbi Uziel already wrote a very long tshuva against that psak, at least when the public is accepting upon himself a leader that will be a woman. That's not a halachic problem. But I want to refer to the main question, which is regarding the Rabbaniot, or the leaders of the spiritual leaders that are women. Well, first of all, I want to say something about the meaning. For me, what does it mean for me to be a Rav? The Chazon Ish, for me, is considered to be one of the biggest rabbis in the last generation, one of the biggest scholars. He was never authorized to be a Rav. Nobody appointed him to be a Rav. As a matter of fact, whoever learned, like me, in Merkaz Aram, and he wanted to get some words written by Rav Tzvi, what he had to do was only to do one thing. He has to put his siddur in front of Rav Tzvi. In the last page of the siddur, there was a nusach of Trumot u'Masrot that the Chazon Ish has written. And Rav Tzvi would add to every siddur that he just saw. Well, the Chazon Ish was a balei bait, and you do not use a nusach of balei bait. And when people are saying, what do you mean? He was a balei bait. He was one of the greatest rabbis in the next generation. So we had, you know how many big balei baitim were in Vilna in those times? And he started to mention a whole list of rabbis that we call them rabbis, but actually they did not serve as rabbis. What does it mean to be a rabbi? If you are knowledgeable and you know to answer the question, so what does it mean? Does it make a difference if you got an authorization by the chief rabbinate or by somebody else? I mean, when I got married, and keep on saying that, when I got married, since I learned Merkaz Rav, and that in those times it was almost forbidden to learn halacha. In Merkaz Rav, you had to learn only Gemara and to concentrate in Gemara. So when I got married, my wife knew almost Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata by heart, and I didn't have a clue in Shmirat Shabbat. So whatever was done in our house was done according to my wife's answers, not to my answer. So what does it mean? She was the rabbi? She was the rabbi. She knew the answer, and I didn't know the answer. So if the woman knows to say what is mutar and what is forbidden, so she will give the answer. And if she doesn't know the answer, so even if it's a man, we'll be better off if he will not answer. So it doesn't make a difference if it's a man or woman. If he knows the answer, let him give the answer. If he doesn't know the answer, let him not give the answer. So if the question is, halachically speaking, does a woman could say an answer? There is a long list of women that were scholars in previous generations. The Sefer HaChinuch mentions this, and the Sma's wife, and the Sma's mother, and there is a long list of rabbis that their mothers, wives, or daughters were big scholars and gave shurim and paskin halachot. That's not the issue. To be honest with you, when it comes to issues of modesty, I always wondered, how is it normal that a woman would come to the rabbi, that is a man, to ask him intimate questions, and this has to fit to modest norms? For me, it sounds very strange. For me, as a rabbi, I felt very strange that my daughters, when they went to Ulpenot, they had to discuss personal questions with men that were rabbis. Why should they? Does that fit to our modest norms, to the halachic norms? So if there are women that could answer and could respond to these questions, to these challenges, why shouldn't they be there? Just because in previous generation they did not know the stuff and they didn't know what to answer. So I see no reason why women would not be involved. As a matter of fact, when Nishmat started the programs of Yoatzot Halacha, again, in the beginning, it sounded to some rabbis as revolutionary. Today, I think in our world, it makes sense for so many women that I guess many of us ask ourselves, almost like, how did we get along without the ways? How did we get along without Yoatzot Halacha 10 years ago or 20 years ago? How could we? I mean, it makes sense that women would ask these kind of questions to women. So the spiritual leaders that we are in favor of in Orthodox is dealing with allowing women or encouraging women to know to answer questions in other areas, such as Ilchot Avilut, such as Ilchot Shabbat, such as other issues that if they know the answer and they will be well trained, they will be able to respond to women that are asking them these kind of questions. But yet, I want to emphasize, and I'm against the Mahara, it's a program in New York, And I'll explain why. Not because women are not capable enough to learn and to answer halachic questions. I believe that if they will study, if women could be doctors and could be lawyers and could be psychologists, there's no reason why they won't be able to have the knowledge to answer halachic questions. But when we come to deal with the structure of the shul, where the place of Avodat Hashem is based upon separation, and it should be based upon separation between men and women in the place, in the structure of Beit HaKnesset, of the synagogue, of the shul. Over there, where the rabbi is playing a very important role in the men's section, because that's where the davening is taking place, that's where Kriyat Torah, that's where the Chazan, that's where the main part of shul is working. It's not modest, it's not proper, and it's not, I think it should not be done that a woman from the women's section will start to run the davening. That's not proper, that's not modest, and that's against our tradition of the way shul should look like. And therefore, despite the fact that I want to encourage women to be involved in shul's life, and despite the fact that I want them to be able to respond to questions that they are asked, and I hope that more and more women will be asked more and more questions, yet I believe that shul will remain in the way it should be halachically working, and therefore women could not be.
And of course, in order, in any event, to have strong female spiritual leadership, we need to have looked before then at growing a community where our girls, our teenagers, our young ladies are knowledgeable and spiritually sensitive. Rav Moshe, your grandfather, Rav Soloveitchik, was one of the lone voices in the mid-20th century, together with the Lubavitch Rebbe, about girls and women studying Talmud. When he started the Maimonides school, Talmud was in a curriculum which at that time was unique. And I know that your father, Rav Lichtenstein, had even, when he wrote about women studying Talmud, had also put in a personal note there that that's how he had taught his girls to have lessons in Talmud, and that's what his wife had also grown up with, and of course your sister, as has been mentioned, Esther Rosenberg, is running the flagship Migdal Oz Midrashah Institute of Women's Learning. What would be your recommendations in terms of how we can create and nurture a learning community of women who appreciate the halachic system, who are spiritually sensitive, who have a feeling of ma'ahavti tortecha kol hayom b'sichati, who speak and live the values of Torah? How can we nurture that here in our communities?
Okay, thank you. I'll just be a good Israeli politician, and you guys the microphone to respond to some of the previous observations before I answer this, because this is a softball question and some hardball before, which I'd like to address first. I go back to the opening remarks, and maybe I have a soft spot for theory. I must say, I'm quite perplexed by sort of stuff said in the beginning. Namely, if we think there's a problem with the get, or with Yusha Tabat, or with male and female inheritance, that problem is Kadosh Baruch Hu's problem. And honestly, I think emerging world women Judaism is going to solve that. In other words, I may have a problem with various other prohibitions. I may have a problem with, for instance, a Kohen and Grusha. I may have a problem, I may not understand the other mitzvot, but if the problem is that the young generation is questioning that, the basic question, there's a whole different discussion, which is how to explain mitzvot to that generation. We've heard so many takanah, it's going to change the problem. The problem remains, God said that men get a Yerusha and women don't. So either we say that his values dictate to us our value system, and then we engage in educational and pedagogical one method to explain why we understand, or we start the Rambam says occasionally we don't understand and we learn to live with questions. Or if we want to question the Kodesh Baruch Hu based upon a value system, I don't see how takanot are going to solve that problem. Because the takanot will just say that we've changed, we've suspended part of the system. But the system remains, I can understand that Chazal come and say that Ben Sora and Mora was never put into practice. But the value statement remains. Josh Kabel Sachar. The value system of Rishon Tabat is there. I talk about background. There are many statements there which are difficult for me to stomach, particularly because I have only daughters and not sons. But I think I don't see how there's anything we can do at the moment. The hardcore issues, such as male versus that men give a get, I don't see how you can possibly solve that problem. Unless you want to come and say that the takanot won't solve the philosophical problem over there. So if we come and say it's practical, I agree 100% with what was said. There is never, at the moment, every single Haredi daughter gets her share of the Yerusha, and we solved that problem. But first, it was out to change the system. By the way, that's my memory. He himself decided at the end that it was impossible. He deliberates, he agonizes. It's very moving and touching to read over 100 pages how he goes back and forth. At the end, he withdraws a suggestion because he says it's simply against the system. And I don't know. We can have a whole evening about mitzvot that we don't understand. But that, I think, is not. I understand this evening as suggesting that issue because we have an issue about why the Torah prohibited homosexuality. And whatever I'm going to say, at the end of the day, the Torah said this. And if the younger generation doesn't like it, so I said before, we resort to various educational methods. But this is what the Torah is saying. It's saying this about Yush Shabbat, it's saying this about. So I think the soft issues we can. Certainly describe how we want them to evolve. But the hardcore issues, the value statements, they're there. And I simply don't understand. I can understand the validity of admitting that contemporary Jewish has a problem with that. I can, like the Rebbe state, maybe it's better not to ask questions that you can't answer. Maybe it is better to ask those questions. But I just don't think that for practical solutions, I'm 1,000% for every possible trick in the book to enable solve the problem of women who are refused Giti, and to solve the problems in Yerusha. But to come and say that the issue is not the practical solution, the issue is the value system. So I don't see how we're going to. I'm not going to roll the button Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's his Torah, and he dictated his values. So therefore, I said that. Secondly, we'll start with a few examples for quote unquote revolutions. I think there's a bit of I think it's a bit of a romantic presentation over there. Meaning, until Rabbeinu Gershom, it was all black, and then came the white knight, made it all white. First of all, to the best of my impression, it was a process, and to begin with Rabbeinu Gershom, it was simmering pre-Rabbeinu Gershom. As a matter of fact, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not a personal historian, but occasionally, at Chadaini Maskar, I do read some history occasionally. Rabbeinu Gershom was not the only recorded and known Takkan Rabbeinu Gershom was not this one. This is known from the 13th century, but not from necessarily from Rabbeinu Gershom per se. And it means this evolved. I think it was a more evolutionary process. And I would certainly say about the Kaddish for women. First of all, I think it's a beautiful example of an evolutionary movement. It was not done out of any desire to make a statement or have any desire to overhaul the system. It was spontaneous and intuitive and a tragic situation. And that's exactly like on evolution. When someone does something naturally because he feels emotionally it's right for that. And secondly, I also think, the Gemara says, Yesh Konel Lamo B'Sha'achat. A person can basically, he can make his, made his life worthwhile in 1 hour. Head Rebbe in high school said, that's true, but the big question is how many sleepless hours you spent before that 1 hour. And I don't think this Kaddish came in a vacuum. It came after simmering processes which have been ongoing for 20, 30, 40 years. And I indeed believe that these issues, Kaddish, Zimun, participation in Tefillah with Tzibor, these are exactly prime examples of where the direction we're headed in. I hope in an evolutionary fashion, and when they're done, not a statement, but simply done, that they're evolving out of their situation. That's what I view. There was the cumulative effect is revolutionary. If you look at what was 100 years ago, but it is evolution. But it's revolution which is achieved on an evolutionary time scale and through an evolutionary mindset. And that's what that's what I call at least evolution. And the final point, and I'll answer your last question. I'm for Tarnadorim. I tell my daughter I make sure my daughter makes Tarnadorim every year. What I think is a mistake is to give a clap on the beam and shul and tell the woman to rush to do. Rather, I think I don't think it's a tragedy if you do that, but I do think that when you simply advise, enough women learn, and they come and consult and ask. So over time, you create critical mass from below, rather than tomorrow morning embarking on a campaign for Zila for women or for Tarnadorim for women. Rather, women are knowledgeable. We'll ask the questions. We'll give them the answers, and this will, I think, from below, it will be done. I admit this is it's a more mundane and less romantic perspective of things, but I just think it's more effective. Regarding Talmud Torah, I certainly think that, Baruch Hashem, I think there have been huge advances. We continue to make them. It's certainly true that the opportunities that our status daughters have are better than those 20, 30 years ago. And I'm relatively satisfied with the fact that programs open for Gemara, open for learning. I think where we have to go is, first of all, take it on to the high school level. I think it's a process that will happen. When you begin teaching Gemara in high level, post-high school, eventually go down to the high school level and then filter down to the lower levels. I certainly believe that's something which we desire, and we should hope that will happen. And I think it's a process which will be happening. And if someone's a good job area to go into, it's women teaching Gemara. I think it's a very good place to get job training, because there'll be plenty of openings in that field. I think the real problem, I would also certainly add, this is not Gemara per se, but I certainly think we should do much more within the school system in general. Tefillah for girls. At the moment, I feel that Tefillah for girls is not treated as seriously as Tefillah for boys is. This is a story from 20 years ago, but when my oldest daughter was in 6th grade, so I spoke to one of the teachers in the local school. When she was in a different school, I asked them, what percent of the kids daven mincha every day? So he said to me something like 60%, 40%, I forget the exact number. And I said, that's very nice. So he said, and I said to him, because I'm asking, because I went to my daughter, they don't tell them to daven. He says, girls, no, 0%. I'm talking about men. So there, I think we should do a lot. I think schools, tefillah should be made, and the school should not assume any difference. However, I would like to make two points regarding this. Number one is, I think it's important to recognize that there may never be certain differences. We went to the Kol Torah Beit Yaakov, Parshat Shavua, the Tagid of Bnei Yisrael. Chazal assume that there are certain differences. When I was young and a bit naive, I guess, I always assumed that, the boys and girls are the same thing. Maybe boys are a bit stronger and play basketball. But broadly speaking, there was no differences. Now, as I got older and I got married and I had daughters, I began to realize, of course, that, some of them are, some of them Venus, and that men, boys and girls have different psychology, different needs. Now, it's not a blanket assertion. Broadly speaking, I think there's certainly are differences, and we take a look at. I taught 12th grade in Cleveland, Ohio for 2 years, and the school had what they called the Beit Midrash program. in which it was like supposedly a high-level advanced group. So I taught the boys advanced Gemara, and someone else was teaching the girls advanced Gemara as well. It was non-co-ed, but they were both teaching advanced Gemara. And this is the USA, it certainly has to be equal. So the school, the mechitza, the school show, the mechitza went straight down the middle, even though it was very awkward geometrically and architecturally, but as long as we made a statement, everything was equal. And so it was about the learning. So one day I went to the principal, I said to him, listen, you want your baby drash for boys to be a bavua de bavua, a reflection, a mirror image, or a mirror reflection maybe, of a yeshiva. So you teach them advanced Gemara. What you should really want is, for your girls' program, not to be a bavua de bavua of a yeshiva, but of a midrasha. And midrasha teach more Tanakh and less Gemara. So maybe ask the girls, maybe they want more Tanakh, less Gemara. So we agreed to survey the girls. 2/3 indeed preferred Tanakh. 1/3 preferred Gemara. It wasn't a big group, the sample was 6 girls. And so I made a deal. I said to them, listen, the four girls, we'll switch to a Tanakh track and recognize that even though we can say equality, this is what they want. When I said they wanted Tanakh, the 2 girls who wanted Gemara, so I took them into my shir and I had them sit in a separate table. I made them take an oath never to tell anybody. I just don't hear it's weird with that. And we integrated them, and they did very well. One of them is a very good Jewish educator. Ellen became an engineer afterwards, but she's a Batorah. And one of them became an educator. And but this time we should be dogmatic in trying to impose a one-size-fits-all model. And I think remains true. And I think we should do whatever is best, offer those who want full-time Gemara, but recognize that maybe one size doesn't fit all. We should try to impose the Yeshiva model on everybody. And this brings you to the second point. The girls, there's a problem. The problem has nothing to do with girls and boys. It has to do with something else. In contemporary religious Zionist society, it's what they call Mashber Gemara. The problem is, people are, the value of Gemara per se, of learning Baba Kama, is not always self-evident. In a sense, it never was. It was always done, but never self-evident. Hasidus challenged it. The Lithuanian world rose to the challenge, created both the philosophical manifest, Nefesh HaChaim, and its continuations, and created an educational model to answer the Hasidic challenge. And basically, they created an educational model with a philosophical underpinning in which you explain why learning Gemara is a crucial thing. To a large degree, people question this once more. Now, with boys, we have a certain tradition. Institutions are molded in a certain tradition. They maintain a certain tradition, and boys expect to learn Gemara. Girls, not only do they may have a different mindset, but they also don't have this institutional tradition. So you start from scratch. If I were to start from scratch with boys with no institutional tradition and no Masorah, then if their fathers and grandfathers went to yeshiva, they also, some of them would have a problem. Why in the world I devised such a curriculum? And with girls, that we don't have a tradition, and therefore many of them, in a sense, my sister is really dealing with 2 opposing currents. There's one group, it's like the 2 girls and the 4 girls. One group wants much more Gemara, and much advanced Gemara and Ketzolos and Rashba, and we try to give it to them. And I think we should encourage this. The other group doesn't even understand why the little Gemara they get, they should be getting, because we must like Tanakh and Machshava. So it's a challenge. It's not inherent to a girl's institution. It's a boys' institution at the moment. So it's tradition, which is it's an inertia which allows us to continue, which becomes more problematic for women. So I think we should certainly emphasize and explain the points of Gemara, recognize that this is a challenge which exists.
Now maybe let's bring our discussion somewhat to ritual. Over the last couple of years here in England, partnership minyanim have grown quite considerably, both in the number of them and also the attendance. A lot of people feel that there they are finding a fulfillment in religious expression, they feel truly included. Or Stav, I believe you don't endorse partnership minyanim, as was our chief rabbi also doesn't, and many other poskim. But if that's the case, then how would you suggest that women can find an access point, an active place within ritual?
I don't know where to start from. Should I respond to the question? I will leave the debate between me and Moshe to Israel. And
It's going to get in Israel.
Yes, we'll continue in Israel. And maybe I will further this in the end of this evening. But I want to share with you my experience with the partnership in Yami. First of all, in my city, in Shoham, there is such a minyan. And the people that established that minyan are graduates of Gush Etzion. And when they came over to me, I said to them, so I said to them, look, I go to Rav Lichtenstein. אני הולך לאנשים. How do you say לאנשים? To tell? To tell. Okay, so I went to Rav Lichtenstein, the father, and I said to him, look, this and this, they want to make partnership with me. And what do you tell me to tell them? First of all, what do you think about it? And I think it wasn't really that helpful. At the time I said very clearly that he's opposing that, and he doesn't like the idea. So I insisted, is it forbidden or you don't like it? And it's not the same thing. And he said, he used the verb of en ruach hachamim nocha mizeh, which is a kind of something in the middle. I mean, he couldn't point out something which is forbidden, but to say that our tradition doesn't like it. And there was a whole storm in my community about this. And I announced that I'm going to give a shiur about that topic on Shabbos morning. And we announced it a few days in advance. And when this took place, Rav Lichtenstein has the privilege, or Moshe has the privilege to say whatever he wants in his yeshiva. Was probably no Haredi will follow what he's saying there. But when I have such an event in my city, all the media went after to see what's going on there in Shoham. So we announced that there is going to be a shiur about that, and I think the crowd was more than Shabbat HaGadol and Shabbat Shuvah together. Everybody arrived to that shiur to see what's going to happen there, what knives are going to be used in that shiur. And Friday night, I prepared Friday the paper, the sources dealing with different aspects, but Friday night I spoke with my wife and my children. And we asked ourselves, what should be the right way to deal with that topic in public? And they said you must find something that will blow the air from the balloon that is threatening to blow up and to divide the community and to create a new kind of machloket and division by it. So I said to them, I have an idea. Before I begin my shiur, I want to I want to sing with my congregants together a song. And we started, and I said to my children, I will sing the song of Adarabah, a very famous song that was based on the words of Rabbi Melech Lezhansk, תן בליבנו שנראה כל אחד מעלת חברנו ולא חסרונו. And they said, oh, these are Israelis, they won't like that idea. You have to talk, you have to fight, you have to struggle. And I said, okay, let's try what could happen. And that's the way the shir began. And I started to sing that. And everybody participated with me. And the rest of the shir is unimportant. What I'm trying to tell you about that question is, first of all, that without going into the details, and I have a lot of statements to make regarding why am I opposing the partnership with Yanni, but yet I don't believe that when we deal with these issues, we should use all the energy that generally should be used against our biggest enemies, and that's not the case. We're talking about people that want to worship Hashem, that want to be engaged, that want to feel engaged, and I don't agree to the way they want to do that, and it's on the border, it's on the lines, and maybe it crosses the lines from some, depends on which way they run it, but and we have to deal with that challenge in a way that will not kick them out of Orthodoxy, will guarantee that it will be a part of us, despite the fact that I disagree with certain behaviors that they run in their shoes. Rabbi Moshe has mentioned before the idea of, he's not sure about what will happen with the kidney in 20 years from now. I don't know what will happen in 20 years. I can tell you what happens today already. I dare to say that in our society, the modern Orthodox society in Israel, I don't know what happens in England, I dare to say that between 20 to 30% of the modern Orthodox in Israel don't keep kidney anymore, Ashkenaz. And I guess from your face I feel that you're not surprised. So I guess it's also a problem, but yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, there are worse Isurim in Shulchan Aruch than kidney. So it depends the way we will maneuver that challenge of partnership. Now to refer directly to the question. I think it has to begin with the fact that Moshe has mentioned before, girls have to be educated to daven, to pray. It's not normal that when I arrived to Shoham, I learned that Talmud Torah for boys is taking place twice or 3 times a week, and for girls it took place only once a week. This has to be changed. Girls have to be educated just as boys, not because of equality, but because they have to be educated to be Oved Hashem. So they have to learn how to daven, they have to learn how to make brachot, and brachot lefanea, and brachot leacharea, and they have to be treated just as boys. And then they will have to come to shul, and they will have to daven in shul, and to be aware of the fact that tefillah b'tzibur is something that is important not only for boys, and kaddish and kedusha is important for girls as well. And then I believe that time will come, and then we'll raise questions. What part could we take in shul in order to express our connection to Hashem? And then we will have to see what could fit to the structure of shul and what does not fit. And the Masorah that I received from one of my rabbis, Rabbi Yaakov Ariel, saying, we will enable everything until it touches the structure of shul. And I want to explain what does it mean for me. If there is a woman that could give a shir, I will not prevent her from giving a shir. Not during davening, not in the middle of the davening. Davening is finished, and she wants to give it to our Torah, she will give it to our Torah. not because she's a woman, but because she's a scholar, because she has something to sell, she has a message to convey, and many of us, the adult rabbis, we learned our Torah from Nechama Leibovich, and nobody said it's forbidden. So if we learn Torah from Nechama Leibovich, there's no reason why we'll not be able to learn Torah from other Rebbetzins if they could teach us and could tell us, could share with us their ideas of Torah that they are acknowledged. So, if something will change the structure of the shul, I will be against it, because there is a structure of shul that is given to us by the Masorah since the existence of Beit HaMikdash, that is mentioned in the Gemara, that Takana Gdola Tiknusha, to separate the women and men in the time of Sukkot, and since then it was adopted to other, to all shuls, and as long as the woman involvement in shul will not change the structure of the shul, I will be in favor of it. I will encourage that. As a matter of fact, we invited last Shavuot an amazing woman to give a shiur in the Tikkun Shavuot in the middle of the night, and Baruch Hashem, she shared with us a lot of wonderful ideas, and everybody was pleased by them. When it comes not to be a chazan, and not to have aliyah Torah, and not to do anything that will change our custom of what the face of Torah will, the face of the shul will look like. You know, I happened to learn that I want to share with you an anecdote. I gave a shiur a few weeks ago in Shoham, after the Naftali Bennett visited Solomon Schechter's school in New York. Was criticized by the Jewish rabbinate for visiting the conservative high school there. So I was asked to give a shiur about our approach to conservative streams. And so I discussed the issue of Mechitza and Shul, the big debate that took place in the States in the 40s, maybe the 50s. And then the decision of the conservative rabbis to allow non-observant people to come on Shabbat, officially to allow them to come to drive their car on Shabbat to the synagogues. So I said that this was one of the big points that divided or split the communities. And then someone came up to me and raised his finger and said, look, I want to share with the rabbi a story. I lived in one of the towns in the United States. Next door to my house, there was a conservative synagogue. The Orthodox synagogue was 8 miles from my house. So I called the rabbi, the Orthodox rabbi, before Shabbat, and asked him, what should I do? I have a conservative synagogue next door to my house, and an Orthodox synagogue 8 miles. And the Orthodox rabbi told me, drive your car on Shabbos to my synagogue, to the Orthodox synagogue, and don't dare to put your foot in the conservative synagogue, which is next door. And you say that the split has begun when they allowed and when they said that it's possible to drive your car on Shabbos in order to come to shul. I'm just sharing with you my experience. What I'm trying to and I agree. I guess the right recommendation would be that he shouldn't go not to the conservative and shouldn't drive his car. At least that's what I know from my grandfather, that he said that someone asked him about hearing shofar.
Okay, but it's not going to get the conservatives will go fish in the evening. So.
Will not fix it. What I'm trying to bring out is the following. We have to look for elements that will be able to involve more and more women in Torah studies, in Tefillah. We are in favor of reading the Megillat Esther, and again, by the way, it's an example of something that for many rabbis was considered to be revolution in Israel when it started 20, 25 years ago, and today we have hundreds of shuls that have the Megillah learning for women at Purim, at night and in the morning. Anything that will change the structure of shul will oppose anything that will increase connection and engagement of women to shul and to the community will be blessed.
I just had to be I'm in broad agreement with Aristo's presentation. I just had the following. I think you should certainly emphasize davening and the like. I think also, more broadly speaking, mitzvot aseh shazman grama. With mitzvot, there's no problem with mitzvot. I mentioned for the example of lulav, and there are many voluntary mitzvot which traditionally girls were not encouraged or exempt from. I think there's a whole area there which is not problematic and which can be utilized. Now, it doesn't solve the problem of public participation, but if you're asking not about that issue, and I won't, since the question assumes a certain premise, I won't open that for discussion, but rather, if we're assuming that where can you expand, I certainly think this is, in general, to put it more broadly, we should certainly emphasize, in other words, trying to motivate, more intensive motivation for the plant opportunities which are underutilized. And I certainly think those girls are very motivated, want more, and then they get to areas which they run up against the opposition, which are stuff expressed before. But I think for for many girls, there's still a lot, there's still upside which hasn't been utilized and should be done. Secondly, it's problematic for men to speak about this because we don't always feel the exclusion. In other words, I can come in a moment and say, well, it doesn't really matter, but then again, I'm sure that, and rightfully so, people say, well, you're not excluded and you can't make such a statement, and I agree. So there's a certain inherent problem by having such a lineup, I guess, and therefore it's, but I will, so having made that, and I certainly recognize that's it's a point drawback, I will though add one point. At least, people have alluded to my lineage, the Rebbe spoke about the lonely man of faith. And in his perspective, the essential movement of faith, essentially we would call the faith gesture, is the individual. It's me and God alone. And that's the essential movement. So I agree that public participation, because I said, so do I often, if I get an aliyah, or if I'm a chazan, is it meaningful? Yes. I would certainly not deny that. I certainly recognize that the moment denying that woman creates a problem, and there isn't, it basically blocks opportunity which which one could certainly have experienced. Nevertheless, I ask myself, what are my deepest moments of that Hashem? What are the moments I experience with Baruch Hu most directly and most immediate? They're almost always private moments. They are moments, not necessarily in shul. It could be on a rooftop in the desert, in the army. It could be in someplace in nature. It could be in a hospital. It could be in many different places. But the essential movement, in other words, the essence is really the individual, the Kodesh Baruch Hu meeting and communing, and that is open. So public participation has value, and there's something which is still being denied. But I do think it's secondary to the basic faith gesture. And as I said at the beginning, if we talk about the issue of equality, so it's a huge problem. If we talk about that Hashem, and so there is a problem, but it's not like when nothing is available. I think the essence really is still there. And now I'll just add, I agree with everything that was said before about the minyan and the like. I don't rule out that at some future point things will change. In other words, I spoke about an evolutionary process before. I don't rule out that event at some future point in time. At the moment, I really believe this is a revolution which should not be, at the moment, should not be done. But looking peering into the future, I have no way of telling what the time span is or whatever. I don't rule out that these things may, at some future point in time, undergo this kind of evolutionary process in which, and then things will be changed. Now, as I said in my opening remarks, for individuals in this room, there may be little comfort because our lives, our individual lives, will have a much shorter span. If I ask about what does the system have to offer, what direction is going, I don't rule out that in future generations things will indeed be different. And I think at times we do ask, if I was sent to war, and basically the Israeli army said, we are willing to risk your life, and tragically it often happens that people are killed in action, we're willing to risk the life of the individual for the better benefit of the collective. So I think we also tell the individual here, we are, even though we're postponing your fulfillment, and maybe postponing it to a generation, sacrificing your fulfillment for the good of the system, but I believe that if we devote the Torah to mitzvot, so the basic religious gesture is accepting the system, even if it's postponing. I'll give you a simple example. When you blow shofar Rosh Hashanah, it's a tremendous religious experience. You know, the Rambam, everybody describes it. When Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos, we abstain. Now, it really is a big prize. You know, there's a famous story about Rabbi Shlomo 100 years ago. He went to the basement to blow shofar because he couldn't not hear shofar Rosh Hashanah. I saw that again, and the Gemara says that Kol Shana Shu Merim B'Tchilatam Merim B'Sofa. If you don't, it's a planned word, it's a pun. If you don't blow the beginning of the year, you have tsaras at the end of the year. And nevertheless, why do we abstain? We feel our individual religious experience should be postponed for the broader benefit of preserving Shabbos throughout the generations. So once every 3-4 years, we lose out on shofar and the experience because we want the system to be preserved properly. So sometimes, yes, we pay these prices,
We're keen to open up for questions, and I'm sure that there are many questions. Before we do, I've just got one final question, which is something that living here in London, I think about a lot. I think it's something that's come out of the conversation as we've been speaking about. We've spoken about the evolution of the process, we've spoken about compassion and sometimes looking for needs to change. And at the same time, one can sometimes jeopardize unity. And here in London, every community has strengths and weaknesses. And one of the things that I think we're quite blessed with here is a certain unity that within our schools, there's a diversity, that many different sectors of the community sit side by side. Within the rabbinate, there's a diversity. And there is a unity across the community, from more secular to modern Orthodox to the more Haredi elements. And when we talk about the evolution or the more revolutionary aspects, at what point do we say it's more important to champion a certain change because that's what's necessary for the future of Judaism? And at what point do we say we're going to hold back on that because we actually risk dividing our community? And I think that's something you've both been involved in, both Gustav, with your work in Sohar, which has built such incredible bridges in Israel, and also Rav Lichtenstein, just one example, I know reading through your Teshuvah about it back in 2013, following the issue of when soldiers had left the army ceremony, and with women singing, there was a response that you wrote. I'm not sure whether it was particularly really triggered by the event and a need to re-examine the halakha, or whether it was the timing, but again, it's that need to build the bridges and have unity, and that can sometimes work furthering change, and sometimes maybe it's a question of holding back change. So I wonder if in your closing comments before we take questions, you could perhaps just comment on that.
It's a question of balance. I think the question is certainly a very relevant question. It's a question of balancing two conflicting values. And whenever you balance conflicting values, there's no formula. The formula is you take into account both needs. Application always different. There's no way I can tell you a one-size-fits-all solution which is good for London and New York and Los Angeles and Yerushalayim and Haifa and the like. It's recognizing that the different values over here, and it's what we're dealing with throughout the evening, that unity is one value, allowing participation is another value. You have to prioritize. It depends. If is the price, are you preventing a small opportunity or a very basic opportunity? Will the damage done to unity be slight damage, or will it blow up the community? Application will always have to be local, and there's no way to give a precise formula. You have to take into account his community needs. I'll just make the following story. Rebbetzen Lauren Levin was once interviewed by a reporter who tried to egg him on to attack other factions. So Rebbetzen told the following story. Rebbetzen Brisker was once, he received a letter from Rebbetzen Levin Lifshitz was Rebbetzen Lauren's private secretary, and apparently some of the Kanoi. And he tried to convince Reb Chaim to cooperate against the Zionists. So Reb Chaim read the letter, folded it up, put it in his pocket. And someone said to him, well, what's it all about? So he told him what the letter said. No, do you plan on saying yes or no? So Reb Chaim said, of course not. So he said, why not? You're both opposed to the Zionists. So Reb Chaim said to him, I'll give you a parable. Both the housewife and the cat hate mice. Well, there's one difference. The housewife prefers there should be mice, there should be problems. The cat wants there should be mice so she can chase them. And he says, he is a cat, I'm a housewife. And this is what Baruch told that reporter then. Meaning, at times we have no choice to take positions which may cause problems in unity. We should always examine ourselves and always ask, are we taking the position despite the damage that will be done to unity? In other words, we feel at times that it's still be counted, even though you know you pay a price regrettably, or are you a cat? Do you enjoy the fighting? Do you enjoy clawing and scratching the other side? Do we enjoy that or not? We should always ask ourselves that question. We can answer that we sincerely desire no machloket and and there shouldn't be problems. But what can you do? At times, certain values override others. At times, unity overrides. At times, long opportunities. So be it. I would much. I think we always have to ask ourselves how much we are looking, enjoying a controversy, I guess. And how much we do not, and that we should always ask ourselves that question.
I think that first of all, again, I completely agree with what Moshe said. I wanted to add one component to that question. In many occasions, we feel that. Because we want to preserve our unity, we hide our positions, we hide our beliefs, and usually it will serve, I don't want to call it in names, but it will serve those that for them it's considered to be a reg v'al ya'avor, and in most of these cases, those who are struggling for something which is important for them, but they couldn't say it's Yahweh for them, they will always lose their battle. They will always lose their case. By the way, what happens, for instance, in many occasions in Israel, that you see that all of a sudden, many, it could be by rabbis, it could be by politicians, they used to say that everybody in Israel is afraid from Fege in Meshorim. Who is Fege in Meshorim? Well, I look to the right and I see to my right somebody, and he looks to his right and he sees somebody. Eventually, it ends up by one of the rabbis in Meshorim that is afraid of his wife, that her name is Fege, and he's afraid of her, and that's how everybody is affected by this Fege from Meshorim. We used to say about Clinton that Clinton is influenced by one of the Merkaz members of the Likud, because everybody again looks to the right it could be Netanyahu, it could be somebody else that is afraid of someone that is standing to his right. So it's true that the value of unity is important. And I think that whenever we deal with such a problem, we should look after solutions that will not divide communities. For instance, if there is an issue of Sefer Torah during Simchat Torah, I mean, people could say, let's make a vote and let's decide that we do it this way or another. And then a part of the community will feel offended, will feel excluded. And you could find after solutions that will bring that, for instance, that Sefer Torah to a place that it will not cause it will not cause to a division inside the community, it will take place somewhere else. Now, if people look after solutions, they will find the solution that will be able to preserve unity on one hand and to allow each one of the parties to express their beliefs and their wishes. Whenever someone tries to take over and to destroy the legitimacy of the other side, that's a place where using the word unity is not in the place. Unity does not mean that the majority or those who are noisy or those who maintain to be more something will have the ability to destroy the others. That doesn't mean unity. That means that someone wants to dictate his position or his beliefs and to take control and to utilize the word unity in order to delegitimize the others. That's one short comment. The second comment that I want to say, we all are aware of a very famous Midrash. The Midrash says, Chavor la'atzabim Ephraim hanachnu. Whenever you see the Jewish people that are united, even if they are united around atzavim is idols, even if they are united about ideas that you are not falling in love with, you are not in favor of these ideas, hanachnu. The idea of creating unity among communities, among us, in various occasions, even though we have to pay price for that from time to time, it's valuable. And we have to take this in consideration as well.
I agree, but I just think that it's true that you're delegitimized. However, if you have to be responsible adult in the room, and the other side is there, you're responsible, so you become a responsible adult. And if you pay a certain price, so be it. I think being a responsible adult is a value, irrespective of what the other side is doing. And before you went to the question, I just want to say, like I said a while ago, I do feel uncomfortable. At the end of the day, we have two men discussing issues which really, relate to the religious fulfillment of the other sex, and it's something maybe uncomfortable. So I could say I certainly think that we should do the best possible to provide as many opportunities as possible and to provide the best possible religious experience for both men and women, and that we should put this on the table, and we are, recognize both the problem and also I feel full sympathy and empathy to provide Avodat Hashem as much as possible.
I think we've had a lot. Even just to take away that even in Mea Sharon, the buck stops to fade all the women. But also, just as we've come from Parashat Yitro with the excitement of Matan Torah, we go on next week to Mishpatim and to it coming into our everyday, the laws of our everyday life. I think that some of the ideas that we've taken, that we've discussed and we've heard about tonight, specifically what Rav Moshe has just spoken about now, is actually growing. We need to, as a community, really think about how to continue the fantastic work that's being done in our schools, in our youth movements, with our young people, the opportunities for women and learning, as we have at the Midrash, the Yeshivat Institute for Women's Torah Studies, and how we can grow those, that we can actually really nurture a community of learned, spiritually sensitive women to increase the wonderful community that we have now. We'll take some questions. We are confined with time, so we'll take a couple of sets of questions. We'll start with a set of probably about 3 questions, and then we'll open up for answers.
Hi, thank you. I don't know how familiar you are, each of you, with the UK community, but I would like to say that some of the experiences that you have gone through, certainly in Eretz Yisrael and in the States probably over the last 20 to 30 years, have not necessarily been replicated here. Some would call it more Dickensian, possibly medieval. I don't know. You specifically spoke about Sukkot. And just as a personal experience, I'll say 2 personal experience and then I will ask a question. My daughter shook, she's now 17, but about 4 years ago shook lulav in our shul in Edgware and was asked why she was doing that. She replied, because it's sukkahs, but nonetheless, in that very same shul 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, there was a session about women and Talmud Torah, and the Rav in that shul said that women will not be asked by HaKadosh Baruch Hu about their Torah learning. And in this very shul, actually, there is a Gemara shiur which is held for women. And the wonderful Rabbi Kimchi, who encourages that shiur, still had to some extent, not be able to call that shiur a women's Gemara shiur. So I just want to locate where we're at. And with that, I want to ask the question. You said you were uncomfortable, Rav Moshe, a little bit about, to some extent, being representative or talking about these issues when you yourself are obviously not female. You also mentioned this idea that Rav Strauss talked about the sort of practical takanot that has taken place, but nevertheless the philosophical difficulties still emerge from the Torah itself. The question I want to ask is there not, however, a divine gift or a divine value system that we, the human beings, are those people who take that Torah and we make it, we change it, we paskin what has to be. And if that's the case, that is also a value, a divine value. And it is also true that thus far women have been excluded from that divine value. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Just if we can ask in the interest of time, if we can keep the questions brief.
Both the male panelists emphasise the importance of education for women. So the purpose of education is not just, I mean, you can say it's for its own sake, but if it's for its own sake and you can't apply it to your lives and what you do, then it's little to none. You have to be able to apply it. So in 20 years' time, if what you were saying, where you encourage women to learn, and they do learn, what's the situation going to be for women in 20 years' time if they aren't able to put into practice what they've been learning?
We're going to take 6 questions now in one full set, just because in the interest of time. So if anyone has any questions, we'll go to that side of the wall and come back here.
So currently, I also have 3 daughters, and I'm motivated by what worries them. And one of the things that I worry about when they come to shul is how they feel and how included they feel. And I just want to ask why it is that there are some things that are halachically not necessarily complex, but we still don't allow young girls to do. Like, for example, singing Anis Morot, even in the group. Anis Morot.
Rav Moshe, you mentioned about the sort of, you presented a dichotomy where it's either evolution or revolution. I just wondered if you could elaborate maybe on the role of revolutionaries in promoting evolutionary change. So, for example, like Martin Luther King might be a revolutionary promoting evolutionary change in black rights in America. What the role is of revolutionary.
We had a discussion about partnership in Yanni, but we had a discussion before about partnership in Yanni. I wanted to ask about women's only services, particularly with targeting. So I wanted to ask about women's labeling, it was just women's to life.
Last question. Not for 5 minutes. Thank you.
I would just like to ask a question to each speaker, to Rob Lichtenstein, whether you think you spoke about how we should promote Avodat Hashem for each individual. What would you say to women who, in every other aspect of their life, for them it is incredibly important to have that equality, and they excel in every other aspect of their life? And within Judaism, the only way that they can fully achieve that Avodat Hashem is by having that same equality. And to Rav Stav, I would like to ask about the Maharat program. Do you think that you spoke about how women, you don't think it's right in a way because a woman should get up and lead the davening? Surely that's more of the role of a chazan, and the role of a rabbi is more pastoral in terms of being a role model, giving halachic guidance, all of which can be very well fulfilled by women.
I will not respond to all the questions. I will try to refer to a few of the comments that were made. Well, first of all, I want you to know, to feel relaxed. It's not that in Israel or in the United States we achieved whatever we wanted just a few months ago. In a very famous book that was published, I'll give a hint, in Gush Etzion, not through the yeshiva, but in an institution that is located a few hundred meters. There was a woman that wrote an article, and she was not allowed to say that she was the one that wrote the article. So she had to add the name of her husband, that didn't have a clue in what was written in that article, because your wife is looking at me and she doesn't know what I'm talking about.
It's not biology, I don't know what you're talking about.
She wrote an article relating to halachic issues. She is a very famous woman in Israel. She's a scholar. But she was not allowed to write the article using her name alone, because how come a woman would write such an article? So she had to add the name of her husband also. But he didn't know nothing about the article.
This is the country that introduced George Eliot, let's not forget it.
And I guess that the outlets in the United Kingdom, in the States, and in Israel, that the news about women that could learn and could teach have not arrived. They didn't hear about that. So I guess it's not something that relates only to a certain rabbi here or there. And by the way, there are many rabbis, and even in the YU, that today speak loudly against what Rav Soloveitchik was in favor to teach women Gemara in Maimonides. And they say, we see the results today. And maybe it was a mistake. There were rabbis that teach them, and that's what they said in YU. So it's a debate, and it's a struggle about the role women will play in Jewish life. And it doesn't matter if you call it evolution or revolution. The people that don't like this idea because of various reasons that could be legitimate, will struggle against these, whether you call it this way or not. It doesn't matter for them the name. What matters for them is essence. Should women deal in this? Should they be involved in these issues? So that's one thing, and I think that it's a struggle that time will prove whether it was something that was worthy and it advanced women and it engaged women or not. I could tell you that Moshe's sister, Esti, when I came back I was in Shlichut in Antwerp 25, 26 years ago. She was in Lindenbau in Herzog Street in Yerushalayim. And she invited me to give a shiur there. And when I gave a shiur there, I was given that shiur about the Talmud Torah for women. And I said, look, forget now all the halachic aspects and the spiritual aspect. The question whether it is important or not will be examined by the history. What will happen in 20 years, in 30 years? Will it cause more women to be engaged to Torah, to be engaged to Avodat Hashem, or will it push them outside? There were attempts, and we could say this loudly. There were movements that wanted to bring changes to Judaism, and they ended up outside Judaism. It could be, I could refer to the Karaites, or to Reform, or to other movements that could be that started with goodwill, but ended up outside the boundaries and outside the Jewish continuity. Let's put it this way. So I think what will happen to what we are discussing today, which is 30 years later, than from that speech that I've given in Esti's Institute, is dealing with the same thing. And I'm happy to say that so far we see a lot of achievements, but it doesn't mean that we achieved everything. Now I want to refer to the second question, that if we educate so many women, so many girls to do so many things, but what will happen with them in 20 years? Well, first of all, I'm not a prophet to tell you what will happen in 20 years, but I think that I could say one thing for what happens today that I believe that will develop in different ways in the future. Rav Moshe has mentioned something which I don't know if so many people, how many people paid attention to that. You know, there is a big demand of Gemara studies. I mean, one of the symbols of the revolution with the women's studies is the Gemara studies. Now, what Rav Moshe has hinted to was that, well, it's a wonderful revolution from the women. They're just late. I mean, most of the men don't like to learn Gemara, so they arrive late. So, does it pay for us to invest so much time and manpower in teaching and encouraging and educating girls to learn Gemara when it's not in fashion by the boys anymore? So, the answer, and I would refer to in the same way to the question of davening. I mean, look, and I'm saying this without passion, but I think that's the truth. You know, when I read the Gemara that taught us the principle of separation in Beit HaMikdash between men and women, I believe that to be in Beit HaMikdash, to be passionate about the possibility to worship Hashem with such joyance and happiness, and to see the Kohen Gadol, and to see Simchat Beit HaShoeva, and all the events that are described in such an amazing way by our sages, and to compare this to our daily davening, well, I don't see any disaster that might happen between men and women in today's davening, because I don't see any passion in our davening. And therefore, I could even easily say, well, I mean, what's the difference between sitting here in a Kohen environment and sitting in shul? I mean, it's not that people are so passionate in shul, but that I guess we look forward to a time that coming to shul will be something that will be so, that will lead us to such a high level, will uplift us to such a connection to Hashem that will be better off than we said. today speaking, it's hard to foresee. It's hard to perceive how this will happen now. I believe that part of the education for women to daven and to be a part of the Torah studies, to be a part of davening, will bring them to different ways to worship Hashem in ways that do not exist today in our way of our in the structure of the current shul. So it could be that there will be an answer for another question. It could be that we will encourage more Megillah learning in Purim, and maybe Tfilot Nashim on Friday night, that they could sing by themselves and they don't have to worry whether the rabbi will say that the voice of the woman is too high and they have to lower the voice, and they will be able to pray and to worship with their character, with their behavior, and not to copy, not to follow what's going on in shul, because it's not always something so inspirational that they have to be so enthusiastic about, and they have to copy. And as Aaron Cohen said to Moshe Rabbeinu when he wanted to bring his children to Egypt, he said to him, "Ala rishonot anu mitztarim." We're so sorry about the first ones that arrived to Egypt. I'm not sure that you want to bring the next one. I'm not sure that the model for davening for my daughters is to come to my shul to see how it looks like. Maybe I prefer them to take place, to daven as they daven in Migdal Oz or in Lindenbaum. And you know that today there are tens, if not hundreds of men that come to see how the Slichot davening is taking place in Migdal Oz and in Lindenbaum. And they are jealous at the way they are davening there. So I'm not sure that the way to educate women, and it will not frustrate them the fact that they could not participate and attend in our davening, could be that they will adopt new models of davening within, 100% within the borders of Halacha, without challenging any halachic question regarding Kedusha or Kaddish or whatever, and doing it their way, in a way that will be not less inspirational than our way. I want to refer to the question about the Malach. You are right that the rabbi is not a cantor, although today I saw that the rabbi was the cantor as well. Cantor always was the cantor of today's Shabbos. But I think that the role that the rabbi is playing in davening is much more than the question whether he's the chazan or not. The way the current tefillah looks is that the rabbi is a part of the tefillah. He's the one that they wait for. He's the one that corrects the chazan. He's the one that says if something was done in a proper way, not properly. The main role of the rabbi that is in shul is to be in the place where the davening is taking place. He's the one that will correct about Korah. He's the one that is in charge of it, to run the services in the shul. I'm not saying that the woman could not be a pastoral, could be a part of the pastoral team of the shul. I'm not saying that she could not be that. But to be the one on the pulpit during the davening, to be the one that will run the services, I don't think that's the thing to be done. Now, the last comment, I promised that I will refer to some of the observations that Lichtenstein said. But when we see a takana, and we believe, it doesn't matter if it's Rav Herzog or it's Rabbeinu Gershon. And by the way, if you see takana today, or every takana is a part of a process that took place. But yet, one day someone has established a shtar chatzi zachar. One day someone has made a takana that is started to be written in Shulchan Aruch or in the Rambam elsewhere, saying, from now on, there are no more beginning, or whatever. There are different kinds of takanot, or even if it was not done in one day, but yet it was a process that one day is written, from now on people behave this way. Now, when I learn Torah, and I know that Torah said that get could be given without the will of the wife, or that a man is entitled to get married to several women. And I see that Rabbeinu Gershon has changed that. doesn't mean only that he solved the problem. It means for me, as someone that believes in the eternity of Torah, that I have to understand what happened. I mean, did Rabbeinu Gershon think that the Torah was wrong? For me to think so. I mean, for me, it's considered to be kfirah to think that what Hashem was saying in Torah, it was not. If Rav Herzog debated or at least wanted to make a regulation that girls will get the same part in the Yerusha as the boys, what does it mean? That he thought that the Torah was wrong and the Perek Yosh Nachalim about Batra is not true? Okay. It means that he understood and we realized that despite that the Torah wanted to present a certain idea by saying these rules and by establishing these rules, and I truly believe that he believed that in the ideas of Torah there is a place to develop it in a way that in certain generations it will be implemented in a different way. I will not go into the details because it's a philosophical and halachic issue that has to be discussed in Bet Midrash in more details. But for instance, the idea of what the Gemara in Masechet Eruvin Daf Kuf says, that the woman was cursed in 7 curses, and there are positions that say 10 curses. And what does it mean that it was cursed? She was cursed in those curses, and maybe in certain generations she will be redeemed from those curses. And what does it mean in the way we implement the ideas of Torah to certain generations in one way, to certain generations in a different way? In the fact that Evet Ivri existed in certain generations, and in certain generations they do not exist. I remember your father said once when he referred to Parashat Eshet Yifat Torah, and I guess I don't have to translate that, and I remember him saying, if I have to teach a secular boy, or secular man, or secular woman to teach Torah, I guess I wouldn't begin with that portion. I would start with something else. And so it means that, so what does it mean? Are we ashamed with the portion of Parashat Eshet Yifat Torah? Chas v'chalila. But as Rav Kook explained, in certain generations, this was the way to confront with the challenge of capturing other nations and the way, and as Rav Kook says regarding the command to destroy the 7 Canaanites nations in ways that we would not implement that idea today. What does it mean that the Torah is long? But the ideas of Torah were meant to be implemented or fulfilled in one way in certain generation, in a different generation in a different way. Okay.
I'll be the graphic. First of all, I think the story with Yadar and the Lulav is interesting, upsetting, but also I think optimistic. The fact that Yadar is being with Lulav shoulder ready, and then she's willing to give such an answer and call a kavod to her, I think it's really signs of the progress which even in the traditional UK is being achieved. And I suspect that 34 years from now she'll tell that story to her children, grandchildren with a smile. So I think there's room for optimism nevertheless. Regarding the more basic question, I accept the premise that there's human input into the drashot, and the drashot reflect the interaction between the darshan or the chacham who is engaged in the drashot and the text. So certainly there is human input, but nevertheless there's a tension between the drasha and the text. And it's not plastic in a way that can be taken anywhere and everywhere. There is a certain point at which it cracks or breaks, and that's why I think that we reach at certain point you reach a limit beyond which you can't go. Secondly, the fact that these drashot were codified and accepted at a certain point makes them normative, and we can't, for reasons that I can explain now, we can't always go back and undo them. The classic example is Treifot. The Chazal defined the Treifot 2,000 years ago, even though medical knowledge has shifted, but the codification at the time is binding. And so, if I think we are up against a certain wall, and we are limited in our ability to do that, even despite the fact of the drashot. Regarding the question of learning, I deny the premise of the question. I really think it's value for learning in of itself. I've spent the past year studying about halachot of kohanim eating truma. I'm not a kohen. I will never eat truma, and nevertheless, I deal with that. I study kiddush, even though I have no plans of ever getting married again. So I just basically noticed the premise. I do agree that it enhances it, but I believe that even if things will not change, the fact that women will have captured the area of Talmud Torah, and Chazal saw that as the primary area. Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or. Torah is basically compared to light, and the mitzvah to a candle. And the light is much greater than a candle. So if we're able to give women Talmud Torah, even if it doesn't always turn into practice, I think we've conquered made a major step forward. I also believe, I said before, and this is my main point, there's still a lot of room there for mitzvah, which at the moment is uncharted territory, and which many, I think, for this much opportunity still lurking out there. We're going to get into Semirot. At the moment, I agree with what was said before, that we should leave tefillah and shul ceremonies alone, and therefore, as long as Anim Smirot is part of the tefillah, it's not something on the kiddush room afterwards. So I don't think we'll gain much also by giving Anim Smirot and preventing everything else. So therefore, I think it's better Anim Smirot to adopt the same policy that at the moment that we do not, we don't offer Anim Smirot, so we don't offer Chazak Hashatz and the like. Regarding women laning for women, that's part of the partnership issue, and since the evening is based on the premise that the chief rabbi is opposed to that, we're not open for discussion, so whatever is true there, I think is true here as well, and however the partnership will eventually evolve or play out, this will be part of that same issue, and I wouldn't isolate it from the broader question of that. But the evolution, I can't define exactly, and I think at times maybe you really can't. And I was brought up basically that things are not either or. The processes often are muddled, and in real time they overlap. I can't tell you exactly what point you cross the boundary from evolution to evolution or vice versa. And I agree that there's some personalities which are 80-20 or 20-80, and I just would compare Martin Luther King because I think we're talking about a legal system and ritual, and politics is a different sphere, and what's good in politics is not always good in ritual, and vice versa. I think there's a quote of Churchill who said, and even if he didn't say it, it's clearly an observation, which is pretty self-evident, the qualities needed for a wartime leader are not those for a peacetime leader. The qualities for a peacetime leader are not those for a wartime leader. So what's good in one area is not necessarily good in the other area. And beyond that, I'm willing to talk about individual intuition or individual examples, but I think we just have to leave it at that we can sometimes identify it, and even though we can't give an exact formulation. Regarding equality, I agree, I said before, I agree that the problem is indeed a problem. I also, though, I also do what I said before, despite the fact that some things are denied, I do believe, I think it's true in other areas also. Let's assume there was inequality in physics, or inequality in the way there was 100 years ago. And let's assume, and I will say, if Cook's Chut, when he wrote the tshuva about women voting, there was no suffrage in the United States either. That tshuva has to be viewed in historical context. Suffrage for women was not only lacking in Judaism, and as I said, I want to give Cook the benefit of the doubt that he writing in 2016, he would not be writing like he wrote in 1916, 1920, whatever it was that he wrote. Nevertheless, I think if a person was in physics or in literature or in psychology 100 years ago, so yes, she was denied opportunities, but the essence is nevertheless the discipline itself. The essence is the truth of science and not necessarily how you compare to others. So here too, I think the essence of the religious gesture is first and foremost independent of whether you're equal to men or not. And as before, I think the primary religious gesture remains that of the individual soul. And I think emunah and the man-God relationship is played out independent of the issue of equality. I admit, and I have no solution at the moment, that things are not always equal. As before, it's not also between priests and the Kohanim and the Levim and Israelim, and between Jews and Goyim and the like. Judaism is not based on inequality. I guess that's what you. I think Midrashim, I could give a long speech on. You have different parts of Midrashim. Some do express equality, some are less, but at the moment, I agree that there is an obstacle, but I also think that we should focus upon ways to nevertheless find self-realization despite that.
Tremendous thanks to all the hosts and co-sponsors of Theming for enabling this really important conversation to happen. It's taken, I think, many Shabbat conversations from our table to actually hear. I think there's a lot of food for thought. So tremendous thanks to our staff and our Moshe. And also I'd say a personal thanks as well.
And to Maureen.
Alumna of both Orthodox and also as a Talmidah of many Mizrachim from Yeshivat Etzion and many Chanchot who've come through from Alon Shvut and the teachings from Yeshivat Etzion, that the dynamism, the colourful, confident, unapologetic, proud approach to Judaism that I always encountered, I think is very much towards those worlds that I experienced. And as our staff touched upon, I think that if people haven't necessarily touched on some of those very, very special experiences that do exist in those worlds, it could be something that is worth going and experiencing and discussing how we can grow and build those opportunities here as well. And Mizrachi Hashem, that coming, as we said at the beginning, with the intention that all of this should increase our Mizrachi Hashem, that we should come with the intentions of serving Hashem with truth, and then it should come out in finding the right ways of really finding emet. So thank you.
I'll be very, very brief. I was just speaking just as we started to our Catholics. Just look around tonight. So Monte Shabbos, as we've said, it's Saturday night in England, there's other things we do. We've come together to learn Torah, and as we know, in England, we have something called reality TV. It happens around the world. And certainly reality TV tonight is a true reality. The shows that people see is not reality, this is reality. To have an evening, 2.5 hours spent in the presence of two wonderful men, Rebbetzen, who really understand the challenges of living during the modern world. Mizrachi are proud, along with the Friends of Gush and Tzara and the Midrash, to be part of this tonight. And a special thank you to Josh Pomerantz from Mizrachi, who really organized everything. Moshe has to rush off now, so we won't be able to stay to answer any other questions. I'll start with him. We'll be staying for. We're very excited, Mizrachi. We're excited, Mizrachi. On Monday, we're having a whole day with the Rabbonim, to discuss issues in a wider context. Very exciting times for us in Mizrachi to really establish the beauty of Torah in the modern world, and designed to Latino me and modern world closely. Thank you for coming. Have a safe drive home, and Shabbat
About 5 weeks. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm currently whinging. Soon I'll be whinging as a junior doctor, right? I have jobs as well.
Where are you going to be doing it?
First year at the North Middlesex. Edmonton, yeah. Second year at the Royal Free.
Edmonton is a proper
It's just circuit, depends what time I'm leaving. Jordan had the good idea that I could go down and shark as a Kinloss, which gets me halfway there.